Millions of people enroll in Medicare only to think they've done everything right, and all of a sudden they get a shocking letter in the mail. And this is about penalties. Don't worry, we're going to talk about why you get this letter, what you can do about it, and how you can make these penalties go away. In 2025, the Medicare Part D late enrollment penalty letter continues to remain a factor if you didn't sign up for a Part D plan when you initially turned 65. Now, why might this happen? Why would somebody possibly not sign up for a Part D plan when they turn 65? Well, maybe you continued to keep working. Remember, you don't have to take Medicare if you're 65 and you're going to continue to be covered by credible coverage through an employer or a spouse's employer plan. But let's say you're 67, 68 years old and you decide to come into Medicare, you think you've done things correctly, but all of a sudden you get this Part D late enrollment penalty letter. Why is this happening? Well, in this video, we're going to review what an SEP is, a special election period, for those of you coming into Medicare past 65. We're going to look at this late enrollment penalty Part D letter that you'll get in the mail. We'll talk about what you need to do about this letter and how you can make these penalties go away. So many of you may sign up for Medicare when you turn 65 years old. But here's the thing, you don't have to sign up for Medicare just because you're turning 65. So you can continue to work if you're going to have an employer plan that's with a large employer of 20 employees or more on the payroll. So whether that's your own personal employer or a spouse's employer, you can keep working. You don't have to take Medicare at 65. So a lot of people, they'll keep working, and now let's say they're 68, 69 years old, and they want to come into Medicare. So how does this work? Well, this is what's called a special enrollment period, your SEP. So this is an opportunity where you can come into Medicare after age 65, okay? So again, we're after age 65, our initial enrollment period has passed. Your initial enrollment is when you're 65, but we're years past that now. So this is actually an 8-month window. So from the time you lose credible coverage with your employer, you have 8 months to enroll in Medicare. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, because when I say Medicare, there's Part A and Part B, and then we're going to talk about this letter today, which is Part D. So actually, when you leave your employer coverage, you have 8 months to enroll in Part B, which is your medical insurance, okay? But you don't have that long to enroll in a Part D plan. So the Part D plan, you actually have about 2 months to enroll in a Part D plan. So we'll look a little bit more at the timing of this, but again, remember, this is for people who are continued to work. They're coming into Medicare after age 65. Now, if you're considering doing this, remember that that company has to be a large employer. So what the government considers a large employer is companies with 20 or more people on the payroll, okay? So if you're with a smaller employer of 19 or less on the payroll, you do need to enroll in Medicare at age 65, okay? So you want to keep working. What should you do? Do you have to enroll in Medicare? Well, some people will decide to enroll in Part A only. So now if we look at original Medicare, Part A, again, is your inpatient, your hospitalization, and most people get that for $0 because they've worked for at least 40 quarters or 10 years and pay into the system. So because Part A has no cost to it, it's $0 premium, a lot of people will still enroll in Part A. But you don't want to do that if you're currently working and contributing to an HSA. So an HSA is a health savings account. Okay, so these are great pre-tax accounts where you can put money in there to use for health care. It rolls over from year to year. And for one person individually, it's about $4,300 that you can contribute. I think for a family, it's about $8,550 that you can put in every year of this pre-tax money. So HSAs are fantastic. If you have one of those, though, you cannot enroll in Part A. So Part A of Medicare, you want to say no thank you to that, because if you enroll in Part A, they no longer let you contribute money to your HSA account, okay? So just be aware of that. If you're going to continue to work and you have an HSA, you don't want to enroll in Part A. Now, Part B, you definitely don't need to enroll in. If you're happy with your employer insurance and you're going to continue to work, Part B costs about $185 a month. So that's a minimum. Right now in 2025, Part B is going to cost you about $185 a month just to have Medicare Part B, which is your medical insurance for outpatient procedures, doctor's visits, things like that. So you wouldn't want to pay double for an employer plan. I'm sure they're charging you and taking money out of your paycheck to have that employer plan. So we don't have to enroll in Medicare and pay double if you already have that credible coverage, okay? But now let's look at when you are ready to leave that credible coverage and the timing of it if you're going to decide to come into Medicare. Okay, so you're now ready to retire or you're losing that credible coverage and you want to come into Medicare. So here's how it works. You actually do have 8 months from the date you lose your credible coverage to come into Medicare Part B without any penalties, okay? So you have up to 8 months after you lose your credible coverage to not get any penalties. Now, there's also a very important crucial window here called your Medigap OEP. So this is the Medigap, which is a supplemental plan, like a G plan or an N plan, an open enrollment period. So from the date you lose credible coverage, you're gonna enroll in Part B, you have a 6-month window. So this 6 months actually lines up from your Part B start date. So let's say you leave your job in May, your last date of coverage is the last day of May, and you want to start your Medicare in June 1st, okay? So you would have 6 months from this June 1st start date, 6 months out, where you could get a supplemental plan with no medical underwriting. So this could be your one chance, your one opportunity to get a supplemental G plan or an N plan. They're very comprehensive coverage, but if you don't get it in this 6-month window, you get it years down the road. Let's say you start with an Advantage plan, and then 2 or 3 years down the road, you decide you want a supplemental plan. They're gonna put you through medical underwriting. Now what that is, it's not a physical exam, but it is a series of about 20 to 25 questions about your past health, about your current health, about what medications you're on, and there is a chance that you could be turned down. We see it all the time where people call and they want to get on a supplemental plan, but they have uncontrollable high blood pressure, or they got spinal stenosis, or they've had some cancer or melanoma. For whatever reason, they can't get approved. So it's important to know if you're leaving credible coverage and coming into Medicare, you've got 8 months to get enrolled, but once you enroll in Part B, you have 6 months from that Part B start date to take advantage of getting one of those supplemental plans, okay? Now, obviously, we said here you have 8 months before you'll get penalties to enroll in Part B, but you don't want to wait that long for a couple reasons. So first of all, if you're retiring and the last day of May is going to be your coverage, you don't want to go 6, 7, 8 months without health insurance, right? That would not be smart because none of us have a crystal ball with health. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, you could end up in a car accident or having a fall or getting cancer or something like that. So first of all, you wouldn't want to go those 8 months without some kind of coverage. That would be a big financial risk. But also, sometimes people, when they leave an employer, they're offered COBRA. And people think, well, I'll just use this COBRA for a while. I don't need to enroll in Medicare. But there's something very important. If you're past the age of 65 or older, COBRA, no bueno when it comes to coverage, because what's going to happen, COBRA is going to move to the second payer position. So they're going to say, this person, hey, they're 65 years old, so they should be on Medicare. We're expecting Medicare to be in the first payer position. So COBRA is going to pay second. So to kind of bring this down in our example, let's say you retire, May is going to be your last month, right? Your coverage is over May 30th. You drag your feet. It's July and you haven't enrolled in any insurance yet, but you have COBRA. Something happens, you slip and fall, you know, break your leg or your hip at the 4th of July party, and next thing you know, you're in an ambulance ride, you're in the hospital, you're getting care, you're doing physical therapy, you need skilled nursing. This could be a huge bill. This could be like a $100,000 bill. COBRA would say, well, hey, we're only going to pay $20,000 of this because we're in the second payer position. We're going to pay 20%. and you are now the first payer, and you're responsible for the other 80%. That'd be $80,000, and there's no cap on this. So just know if you're leaving credible coverage, you're coming off of an employer plan and onto Medicare, and you're over 65 years old, you need to enroll in Medicare right away. Make sure in this situation, you would want your Medicare to start June 1st, okay? Now the other thing to know, if you're coming in during an SEP, there's some special forms that you need. There's something called an L564, and this is just a form that proves that you've had credible coverage back to age 65. So let's say you're retiring at age 68, okay? They want to see that you've been covered by some kind of credible coverage every month back to age 65. And that's what this form is. You fill it out, your employer signs it, and it's just proving that you've had coverage back to age 65. So that's important to know. If you're going to keep working past 65, you don't want to have any gaps in coverage. All right, so now let's dig into this Part D side of things. So again, we have a lot of moving parts with Medicare. That's why it can be confusing. That's why people call us and our guides here all the time to kind of walk you through your unique situation and make sure we get all the plans started so you don't have any penalties. So even though this SEP is 8 months before you get a penalty with Part B, Part D is separate. And you can't go more than 63 days without credible drug coverage. That's what the government says. So you have about 2 months to get in a Part D drug plan. Okay. Now, some people, they have credible coverage from another source. So maybe you're a military person and you're getting VA benefits that you get your medications through, or possibly TRICARE is another one. Retired military, you could get your drug coverage through there. That would be credible coverage. But usually if you're retiring and leaving an employer plan, that means you're leaving that credible drug coverage too. So we wouldn't want to wait 6 to 8 months down the road to get a Part D plan, because then you really will get penalties. But sometimes people do what they're supposed to do, right? They got all their ducks in a row, they're ready to retire, they get that L564 form signed, they start on June 1, make sure they have no gaps, but they still get a letter in the mail, this Part D late enrollment penalty letter. And they're like, what's up with this? Why am I getting this? I should not have any penalties. Well, let's talk about why you get that letter, why it happens. Hey, if you found this video helpful, do us a favor. Go give us a like. We always appreciate it. And subscribe so you don't miss out on any of those future videos. And leave us a comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say. We love to answer any questions you have. That's what it's here for. So drop us a comment below. All right, so if you did your SEP paperwork, you filled out your L564, and you enrolled in your plans, why are you getting this letter in the mail? Well, probably what's happened, and we always give the people we work with a heads up on this, that this letter's coming. That L564 form just proves that you've had credible coverage. But with the CMS process, for some reason, they see this with the Part B, that you've had credible coverage, but it doesn't quite always track with the Part D. So they just aren't aware that you've had credible drug coverage, and all you have to do is prove that you had. So a lot of times when the letter shows up, it's not even legit. You don't have penalties. We just have to do some simple things, which we'll talk about those steps, just so they know, hey, yes, I have been on an employer plan with creditable drug coverage, okay? So what does the letter say? Let's kind of go through the parts and look at what the letter says. Well, first of all, at the header, it'll clearly state your Medicare and your plan information. It'll have your information up there, probably your Medicare number, your name, your date of birth, and all of that. Then the next section will go into the reason for the penalty. They'll tell you, hey, you're getting a late enrollment penalty because you haven't been enrolled or you haven't had creditable drug coverage, okay? Then they will go into a definition of what creditable drug coverage is. So really, because you're on an employer plan, usually it is creditable, but what it is it has to equal at least the same kind of coverage that Medicare Part D plan would, or better, okay? So if it's lesser coverage, it may not be considered creditable, okay? And then they're going to talk about how many months you weren't covered. And again, this may not be correct. They may say, hey, for the last 28 months, you've not had drug coverage. Well, you know you have through your employer plan. We just have to take some steps to make sure they get that information, okay? Then they'll go next into the calculation of the penalty. So the penalty is actually 1% of the average Part D premium right now. So it's not a huge amount, but it's for life. So if you get this penalty, it's 1%, and that's every month for the rest of your life. So we definitely don't want this penalty, especially if you don't deserve it. The letter will also state that you have the right to appeal. So it'll say that, hey, if you think this is wrong or incorrect, you can appeal this. It will give you a deadline to appeal, and this is usually about 60 days. So this is not a letter that you, if you get it, you just want to throw in a drawer and kind of ignore or forget about. I do that all the time. I'm like, I'll look at this later. I put it in a drawer because you will get a penalty if you don't get this taken care of in the time frame. So about 60 days is what they give you for the deadline to appeal. Grounds for appealing. So they'll tell you some reasons of like, hey, these are some reasons why you could possibly appeal this, okay? Now, there is something called a reconsideration request form. So this might be a little bit later. This is actually a form where if you get the penalty, maybe you don't pay attention to this letter, you get the penalty and you start getting penalized and you see that money on there being added, there actually is a form. It's called the Part D Late Enrollment Penalty Reconsideration Request Form. So this would be if that penalty is already in place, you're seeing it, you're getting charged that, and you want to try and reverse it, okay? But we're going to talk about just some simple things you can do at the end of this video to keep the penalty from ever even happening, okay? Documentation. This kind of talks about if you want to get a reconsideration on this, what kind of documentation you need, okay? Now, most importantly here, and this is what we're going to talk about, there's going to be contact info on there. So this contact information is going to be a phone number and some contact info for CMS or for your specific plan. And this is going to come into play because we're going to give them a call to try and get this penalty taken away, let them know we've had credible drug coverage, okay? And then on the letter, it also states, here's how you can pay. This is information on how you can pay if you need to pay. And then it actually has representative information. So if you feel like you need an attorney or someone else, maybe a financial planner who helps you out to be your representative to handle this, you can appoint a representative who can handle this and help get this reconsideration for you. All right, so we went through the different parts of the letter, but I'll read you just a little example here from the letter. This letter is to inform you that a late enrollment penalty has been applied to your Medicare Part D plan. Based on our records, you did not have creditable prescription drug coverage for 12 months prior to enrolling in your current plan. Therefore, a penalty of X amount dollars will be added to your monthly premium. You have the right to appeal this decision within 60 days, and you can find the reconsideration request form and instructions on how to appeal on our website. So you can have a website on there or by calling us at this phone number. So again, this letter can be very scary, but you see there it has a website and a phone number. So it can be this simple. If you are enrolling in Medicare, you've been working, and you had credible drug coverage, they just need an attestation for you to say, attestation is a fancy word for, we just have to let them know. So what can you do? This can be very quick and easy. There's a couple simple steps we can take in action to this letter. All right, so there's two easy options when you get this letter if it's incorrect of what you can do. So by far, the quickest and the easiest is to call the phone number that's on the letter and just give them a verbal attestation just stating that yes, you've had credible drug coverage. It's that easy. Just call them and let them know, hey, I'm left employer coverage. I filled out all my paperwork. I came in through an SEP, and I have had credible drug coverage, okay? So just calling, that's going to be the fastest and the easiest. I'm sure there's somebody on the other end of the phone that's going to mark in their computer system that you've had credible coverage, and that letter was sent in error, okay? Now, the next thing you can do, it also says, here is a form called a Declaration of Prior Prescription Drug Coverage form. And they'll say just mail it back into CMS. They might even have a self-addressed letter envelope in there, so you can fill out that form and mail it back in. But in my opinion, I don't know, I don't trust the mail lately. I've had birthday cards not get where they need to go, things like that. So I would just say call. Make the phone call, take 30 seconds to do it, and you won't have to worry about this. Now, you may be surprised if you get a second letter in the mail. So don't freak out, don't worry, but sometimes by the time you get the first letter, maybe you call, they've already mailed the second letter. Because again, you've only got like a 60-day window to take care of this. So they send those two letters pretty close to each other. So don't worry if you've made the phone call or you've filled out the form and you get a second letter. That happens sometimes. So let's say you do get this letter and it's legit, like you know you've gone without creditable drug coverage, and let's say you've gone 24 months that you have not had drug coverage or not had a drug plan, and yes, you're going to get a penalty. How do they figure out that penalty and what does it look like? So the penalty, it's not as huge as like the Part B penalty, right? But it still can add up. So the penalty is calculated by, they take 1% of the national base premium. So this year, 2025, the national base premium for drug plans is $36.78. So pretty much if we take 1% of this, we're looking at about, let's round up, about 37 cents, okay? So 37 cents, put my cents in the wrong place. Don't have any cents, I put my cents in the wrong place. 37 cents, okay? So 37 cents, you might think that's not much, but let's go back to our example that you didn't have drug coverage for 24 months, where they're gonna charge you this for every month that you didn't have creditable coverage. So if we multiply that times 24, that comes out to about $8.88 extra a month that you're gonna have to pay every single month forever while you have your plans, okay? So let's say that you get set up on a Part D plan and that plan for you is $23. Well, they would add that $8.88 every month, okay? And you'd be looking at now $31.88 instead of 23 that you have to pay every month for the rest of your life, okay? So it's not a huge penalty, but again, it does add up. Why have to pay extra every month if you can just take care of this? And again, there is a way to fill out that form. If you think there's a reason where it's not fair that you're getting charged that penalty, you can try and have them make a reconsideration of that. But now you know, if you get this letter in the mail and you've done everything legit, it's okay. You probably just have to make a phone call to call them and let them know that you've retired and you have had creditable drug coverage. And you know, if you have any questions about this or you want to talk through your situation, give our guides a call. They can help you with this. And the best thing to do is if you're going to be retiring or coming into Medicare, call us proactively. Set up an appointment with us. We can help walk you through everything and make sure all your plans get set up on time so you avoid penalties altogether.